Hi everybody, my name is Zoe Burmester and I'm from Darcy Oliver Cake Couture, and I'm here today as a guest tutor at Pretty Witty Cakes. I'm going to show you in this mini tutorial how to make these clementines, satsumas, mandarins, whatever you want to call them. They look real, but they're not. These are made out of a combination of chocolate and modelling chocolate and sugar paste. So I'm going to show you today how to make these, and just to teach you a few tricks really. Any type of faux food or realistic food modelling especially, there are certain techniques. We're going to show you with the oranges, but you can reproduce this with cherries or strawberries or anything else you want to make. So the key things to remember when tackling faux food: observation, really look at your subject. Second thing is texture. The detail and the texturing really brings something to life. And finally, it's the colouring. The way that you colour something will just make it pop and just give it that extra realism. So I'm going to show you today, we're going to work on this one, which is an open peeled clementine. So you get to see the inside and the little segments inside. I will also talk about this one, but it's a lot easier to make. And once we talk about this, you can have a go at doing both at home. So let's get started. So here we have a mixture, a 50-50 mixture of modelling chocolate and sugar paste. Now, before I get going, some of you may have spotted that I have rainbow nails. This is not ordinary nail polish, because that is not a hygienic thing to do when you're making cakes, and we certainly don't want little chips of coloured nail polish in anything that we do, especially for clients. So just wanted to let you know that this is an acrylic gel polish. I've had my fingers zapped under hot lights, and this stays on my nails for about 3 weeks. If you like your nail polish, which I do, and it's a trademark, you'll always see me with coloured nails, it's the way forward. It's my compromise. So just wanted to assure you, as you're looking at my bright pink and orange nails, that that's what they are. So back to the satsuma. I've taken a ball of modelling chocolate and sugar paste, and I'm just going to roll it to size here. You're obviously aiming for the size of a real clementine or a real satsuma. This is around about 40 grams in weight, but do it by eye, yeah? There is no right or wrong here, and actually get a real clementine, work next to a real clementine or a mandarin or satsuma, whatever you want to call it, and use that as your guide. So we start with a ball. Okay, so I'm taking my tool and I'm just making a central hole. This is a silicone sugar tool, comes with different ends and points. These are called sugar shapers. You can also use these, which they are used by artists for clay modelling. These have come onto the market in the past few years, designed specifically for cake makers, and they are fantastic. I use them for all my modelling. So I'm using the pointed tip to take my middle, and I'm now going to go to this tri-tip, which is going to help me now to make my segments. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start using the middle as my guide, and I'm going to work my way around, just creating the segments. Now, because the clementine is going to have the peel around it, I'm not going to see the bottom. I'm only really going to see the top. So I'm not going to worry too much about detailing all the way through. Right, so I'm just going to set my clementine down, and using this tool, I'm going to, I'm just going to deepen my grooves to accentuate the clementine. And the reason that I like this tool is because it's angled on both edges. So as opposed to a blade tool, which is just straight, so as you work your way down, you create this sort of lovely indented V shape, which again just adds to a slightly more realistic curve. You'll also see with these tools is they're double-ended, which the clay shapers aren't. You normally have a bigger size and a smaller size, which obviously you adapt to depending on what you're modelling. Right, so we have our basic shape of our clementine. Now, when you when you look closely at a clementine, the segments aren't smooth. They're textured. They have little bits of skin, and you can actually see through to the flesh of the orange underneath. So what we want to do is we want to try and replicate that a little bit. So I'm going to take the same tool, and I'm going to go down the center and just gently mark a curve. I'm going to do that as I go all the way round. So when you're modelling faux food, the thing that makes it more real actually are its imperfections. So don't worry too much about the sizing, the shape. This segment isn't quite the same size as the next segment. That's great, actually. That's what you want. And that's what's going to make the whole thing seem a little more realistic. So I've gone down, I've put my central line down, and then taking the tip of the tool, I'm going to just rough up the skin. And that is just going to help add to my texture. Just slowly working my way around. Once you're happy, you're going to need to leave this to one side to dry, because you want it quite hard before you cover it in its peel, otherwise it all gets a little bit soft. So I would recommend, because it's got modelling chocolate in it, you could actually just pop it in the fridge for 10 minutes, but just keep an eye on it. If you do that, don't forget about it. And then you can come back to it once it's hard. So I'm going to put mine to one side, and then we'll come back once it's hardened up. We have our hardened clementine middle, and now I'm going to concentrate on making the peel. So I've coloured up the same 50-50 combination of chocolate and sugar paste with a little bit of orange colour. You'll notice that it's different. I always start paler and I build up the colour so that I can really get exactly what I need and get the depth and range of colour. So always go lighter, because once you start adding the dust and the colour, you can enrich. So that's my tip. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to take a little bit of corn flour. I always use corn flour when I'm rolling out. It's the thing that I get on with the best. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll out. I've probably got about 15 to 20, no, probably about 20 grams of the mixture. I'm sticking again. Again, don't worry about it being too perfect. You'll hear me say that a lot because that's just the way I roll, but it's a good tip, you know. At the end of the day, we're playing with sugar and we want it to be fun. So don't be too precious. It was always quite a big hang-up of mine, and now that I do it more and more, I realise actually that it doesn't matter too much. Okay, so I've rolled out a little bit of orange and I've rolled out a little bit of white, and what I want to do is place one on top of the other, because I want the outside of my peel and the inside of my peel, and this is the easiest way to achieve that. Okay, I need to just check that it's going to fit. What we're going to do is we're going to wrap the peel around the orange, and yes, it does fit, but it's a little big, so I'm going to trim it down. Another handy tool, scalpel. I'm sure if you cake decorate, you have one. If you don't have one, get yourself one. They're not very expensive at all. You can pick them up in craft shops and hobby shops, and I would say it's my go-to tool. What's that? Can you just move that ball to one side? So what I'm doing is I'm just trimming off. I'm just trimming off the peel. Just want to check for size really before I commit. And you can see that I'm not really cutting a very regular line, because again, in the spirit of realism, we don't want it to be perfect. What I'm doing now is I'm just pinching the ends together just to seal my paste. I don't want to roll it again because I'm going to end up making it bigger, which I don't want to do. The lovely thing about working with modelling chocolate is that it's just gorgeous to work with, because it yields under the warmth of your hands, so it's very, very flexible. Okay, so we have our peel. what I'm going to do, the other thing is that it also, especially for a project like this, it negates the need for using edible glue or anything like that because it just sticks to itself. So you can see what we've done here is we've kept a section open. So if I choose, you know, the best bit that I want open, let's do that. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slowly bring the peel. If it's a little big at the top, don't worry, we can trim that, which this is. I'm just going to work my way until I'm happy with how this is sitting. Okay. All right, it's a bit big, it's a bit baggy, that's absolutely fine. Now I'm going to trim with my scalpel. Now, what I'm going to do is my ends are a little bit thick. I'm going to pinch as I did before, just to thin them out. With your bits that are left over, you can keep these. You can apply the same treatment. We're going to texture in a moment, and you can do the same thing. If you want to have a little bit of, you know, if you're doing a little tableau, or you want, what's going to add to the realism is a little bit of peel that's just left on the floor. So don't throw these bits away. They're useful. The other thing that I will say about modelling is that these are your best tools. Your fingers, you know, don't be afraid to get stuck in. When I first started cake decorating, I wanted to go out and buy everything, and I didn't because I didn't have the money for it, and I didn't have the orders for it, and I had no justification for doing it. And actually it was great because it meant that I had to improvise and I had to use my hands. So I'm a big one for using what you have. I don't just mean your hands, I also mean things around the house, you know. Later, I do a tutorial. The ice cream cake behind me is a tutorial, and I create a waffle texture on the ice cream with something that you just find at home. So I'm all for that. Okay, so we have our clementine with its open peel, and I have a couple of little extra sections of peel. Now, before I colour it, I want to texture it. Oranges, clementines, they're not smooth. If you look at them, they have little dimples in them, and we want to replicate that. And the way that I'm going to do that is by using foil paper. As I said before, I like to use what's in my kitchen. I like to use what's in my home. Save money if you can. Scrunched up foil paper is fantastic, and I use it for so many different cakes in so many different ways. So take a piece of foil, scrunch it up. I'm going to take my orange, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to press it in to my peel. And you can see, as it works around, that it's just creating that texture. And when we colour it, all those little dips and bumps, the colour will fall down the cracks and crevices and give you a natural shadow and highlight. I will also take a little piece and texture the inside, because again, if you have a look on the inside of a peeled clementine or a peeled orange, it's not smooth. So I'm going to work my way around. I'm pretty much happy with that. And now we can start colouring. I would say if you can pop it in the fridge again for another minute or so, just to harden. It'll make you don't want it too hard because you want a little bit of moisture, but because the dust will sit better. But it starts getting a little bit sticky when you're working with it. So what you do want to do is just harden that up slightly. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to come back and we're going to do the final stage, which is colouring it and really making it pop and bringing it to life. Okay, so we're going to do the final stage, bringing our Satsuma, clementine, mandarin, really not quite sure what to call it, but you know what I mean, to life. And that's going to happen by colouring. I'm going to use dusts. I'm going to use a range. I always put them onto some wax paper because then I can mix them easily. I always tend to colour mix. It's very rare that I use the colour straight out of its pot. These are magic colours. I love them. Their colours are very intense, and they have a fantastic range. But you can use obviously whatever you can get hold of. I've taken some brown, some orange, some red, and some cream and some yellow. So I'm going to start by painting the inside of the orange, and I'm going to actually I'm going to dry dust the outside and the inside of the peel, but I'm actually going to paint the inside because I want a slightly smoother finish, not so matte, which the dry dusting will give me, to give me the contrast of the inside and the out. In here I have a little bit of lemon extract. You can use rejuvenated spirit, alcohol, and I'm going to take a little bit of my orange and I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to start with quite a weak solution. I always do this when I paint. Just, you don't want to go in too strong, just in case you don't like it. And there we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint inside. I'm going to start inside the cracks. Shadows will fall in the deeper parts of something. So that's where you want to start your colour, okay? And if you want to go a little bit weaker, you just add a little bit more of your mixing solution, whether it's lemon extract or alcohol or whatever it is that you're using, which I pretty much am. I'm going to take a tiny bit of red, mix that into my orange. And the reason that I'm going to do that is because it's going to just give me, the orange by itself was a little yellower. Now that I've added a little bit of red, I've got that slightly more sort of tangerine colour. So I'm going to go back, and that layering of colour is just, again, I know I keep going on about realism, but just to paint that flat orange, yeah, I mean, it would look realistic, but actually if you look on the inside of a clementine, there's all sorts of colours going on there. There's cream, there's white, there's a little bit of orange, there might be a little bit of brown. It's this detail that makes something come to life. So if you're not sure, work from a picture. It's my top tip. If you can actually work from a real thing, great. If you can't, just work from a photograph. Google a picture, print it out and put it next to you and use that as your reference. I always do that. I do a lot of carved and sculpted cakes, and I am constantly working from reference for sizing, for portion, for colour. Okay, so that's my middle done. Now we're going to dust the outside. So I'm going to put my wet stuff to one side. I'm going to swap to a dry brush. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix. I'm just going to go straight on with the orange and see. In fact, I'm going to, and this is where using your eye and your judgment will help you. You know, go slowly and go gradually. Always do that, because you can't take away. I'm sure you've heard that before, but you can always add. So I'm just going to push in the dust. And what you'll notice is as I'm putting the dust on, I'm giving it a sort of slightly matte finish. And where we've puckered it and textured it with the foil, you won't have a flat colour. You'll have a colour that moves. Now I'm going to take some of my orange and a tiny bit of red. I'm going to mix the two together again, just to give me a variation of colour. And you can see now how it's deepening and enriching and darkening, which is exactly what we want. What you don't want to do is brush on the inside for the moment. We're going to add a little bit of cream dust in there in a moment. I'm just going to come over to this little guy because I showed him to you earlier, but we didn't do him. He's just a ball of orange modelling and chocolate paste as before, rolled into a ball, little bit of an indentation. Again, he was puckered with the foil in the same way. He was dusted in orange. You can see I've added in orange, brown and red. And in the creases, I've added in a little bit of brown mixed with orange. Again, just to help with the depth and the shadows, I suppose is the word I'm looking for. Yeah. So back to ours. I'm going to take a tiny bit of brown. I told you I never use one colour out the pot because I much prefer it. Not too much brown. We don't want it to look like it's gone off, but just a little bit. And that is pretty much it. The only thing I will say, because we've dry dusted now, I would recommend that it's steamed. So you can either hold it over a kettle or use a handheld steamer. What the steamer does, you can see my fingers, it stops the transfer of dust. It will set the dust essentially. So if this is going to go on a cake, if you're doing a fruit bowl cake and you've got other bits and pieces, I would recommend steaming it. That way you've locked the colour in and it won't transfer onto anything else that you're doing. But that is essentially how you make a lifelike clementine out of chocolate and sugar. Thank you so much for watching with me.